I'm just going to take a few minutes to talk a little bit about the Biocurator Working Group. So it may seem a little funny to have a presentation about the Biocurator Working Group on the Biocurator Working Group call. But as there are a lot of new people and this group has now been running for about 3.5 years, I thought it would be good just to review some of the details. So first of all, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to you all as curators. Without you, the work of ClinGen would not be possible. And we realize that many of you volunteer your time and expertise to contribute to the ClinGen effort. And we really, truly appreciate this, considering that you all have busy jobs and many things going on in your lives. And I think especially now with our current situation, really a heartfelt thank you to everybody who contributes their time. So just as an overview, I'm going to talk a little bit just about kind of the history of the group, what our goals are, our group members and the topics that we've covered, and also review the results of the survey that we'd sent out at the end of last year. So to start with, the Biocurator Working Group really started about 3.5 years ago, and it was actually something that was written into the UNC ClinGen grant, because we realized that as ClinGen efforts were starting to ramp up, it was going to be really important to have a way to keep curators up to date with any new developments within ClinGen, any changes to our protocols, and also any resources that could be helpful. So the Biocurator Working Group was born, and we started with a small planning committee that included representatives across the 3 grants. So our initial planning group was Marina De Stefano from Harvard, myself from UNC, Erin Riggs from Geisinger, and Matt Wright from Stanford. And then later, Courtney Thaxton and Jen McGlan started from UNC. Raj Ghosh was also involved until he began his fellowship. And then Deb joined the group from Baylor. So this was our planning committee, and we are the ones who are kind of responsible for deciding what topics are on calls and really just any goals for the group. So the first thing that we did was to write some goals. Really, what are we aiming for in this particular group? So really, the major goal of the Biocurator Working Group is to act as a forum for education and training for all ClinGen biocurators. And so goal number 1 is to provide curators with continuing education on salient topics in curation. Number 2, to encourage an interactive dialogue between curators for the purposes of troubleshooting problems and brainstorming solutions, sharing best practices and comparing experiences. And then also to serve as a mechanism for feedback from biocurators regarding any issues with the curation process, and especially to act as a mechanism for things that may need to be discussed with ClinGen leadership. A previous goal, which is now under the purview of the ClinGen Education Coordination and Training Working Group, was to provide an access point for introducing new curators to ClinGen gene and variant biocuration processes, including frameworks, tools, software, and educational materials. So of course, as you're now aware, we have the ClinGen community curation effort and the training protocols that are involved there. So one way to think of this is that when volunteers first join ClinGen, they go through this initial training process that's under the community curation group, and then any continuing education, any updates and things like that are through the Biocurator Working Group, which is this group. So looking at our group members, it was kind of fun to put this graph together, just really to see how much our group has grown. So as I mentioned, we started about 3.5 years ago. We had our first call on November 8th, 2016, and that was from Erin Riggs, who was talking about the gene curation process. But since then, you can see there really has been a huge growth in our group. And we now have, as of a month ago, 338 members from at least 112 institutions and at least 18 countries. So pretty amazing. So basically, any new curators are automatically added to the Biocurator Working Group. And actually, for VSEP curators, it's a requirement that you're a member of the Biocurator Working Group. This is something that was written into the FDA application for the ClinGen approved genetic database. So just so you're aware of that, this is an FDA requirement. However, we've had a lot of discussions about whether attendance to these calls should be required or optional. And at the current time, it's completely optional. We certainly encourage you to join these calls, and we certainly hope that they're helpful, or at least some of them are helpful, but attendance is optional for now. And as you're aware, and we always record the calls, I try and share those links as well. So if you're not able to join, you can always have access later. So here are some of the topics covered so far. The topics are generally can be grouped into sort of ClinGen topics, which are specific to our ClinGen processes and protocols, and then more general topics, which could be of interest to really anyone in the genetics community, often around particular databases or resources that could be helpful. So perhaps some of you on this call have attended some of these previous calls. So I wanted to switch gears a little bit and just talk about the results of our survey. And a huge thank you to everybody who responded to the survey. It's just really helpful to get this information. So at the end of last year, we had sent out a short survey really to assess how the Biocurator Working Group can best meet the needs of curators and members of expert panels. It was a Google survey, just 14 questions with a mixture of multiple choice, Likert scale, and text responses. And we had a response rate of almost 25%, which was pretty good. So, and as I said, just really appreciated all of the input there. So firstly, just looking at the respondents, we asked, what is your role in ClinGen? So the majority of folks who responded were curators, also some experts and coordinators, and one PI. And then in terms of the type of work you're involved in, the majority involved in variant and gene curation, also coordinators, dosage sensitivity, and actionability. So one thing we were interested in looking at was how many calls people typically attend, and especially for those who have not attended many calls, and the reasons for that. So as you can see here, so about 70% of folks have attended more than half the calls, which is good, with about a third of people attending most or all of the calls, which was really great. So in terms of folks who have attended fewer calls, the main reasons were that the time of the calls isn't convenient. And, you know, we really appreciate this. Obviously, I personally am on the East Coast of the United States, but we have folks who are all over the world, you know, in Australia, Japan, I mean, all over the place. So it's hard to find a time that's convenient for everybody. And it's one of the reasons we record the calls. Unfortunately, yeah, just hard to find a time when everybody is able to attend. Certainly something that was mentioned is that people just don't have time. And again, you know, we appreciate that you all have busy lives. And again, the reason that we record the calls, hoping that if it's something of interest, you may be able to listen at another time. A couple of folks said they didn't know where to find links to the recordings, so I am going to address that in a later slide. So we also wanted to know what proportion of calls have been relevant to your work. So again, the majority of folks said all or most calls have been relevant, which is good. And you know, there may be some calls that just simply aren't going to be relevant. If you're in a variant curation expert panel, you're not going to find something on updates to the gene curation SOP relevant to your work. So I think we were fairly happy with these results. And then, is the Biocurator working group meeting its goals? Again, the majority of folks felt that we are, you know, very well or reasonably well meeting our goals. And of course, we always welcome any feedback. You're welcome to email me at any point if there's anything you think we could be doing better on. So one of the things that came up actually from a couple of respondents was, I don't know why I've been added to this group. What is the purpose of this group? I'm already in a curation group. Why do I need to be in the Biocurator working group? So we felt it would be important to make sure that people understand what this group is about when they first join ClinGen. So one thought was to include details about the purpose of the group in the initial volunteer training. We've written an introduction to the Biocurator working group document that will be posted on the website and also sent to new members. And then we're going to include a link to the webpage, the Biocurator Working Group webpage on all listserv communications. So just that people have a way for understanding what is the purpose of the group. Also thoughts about how to maximize learning through these calls. And this is something we're going to work on for future calls, but before the call, asking for questions in advance so that you know what the topic is. There may be a specific question that you have. You could ask that in advance to make sure that it is covered during the call, and then providing a more detailed agenda and potentially circulating slides ahead of time if possible. One suggestion was to include live surveys to gauge understanding during the call, and that's something else that we will think about including. And then after the call, providing a short summary of important points and circulating slides and links. So I certainly do circulate slides and links to the recording after the calls, but we will work also on providing this summary of important points. And then another suggestion was really just to have better organization of recordings and resources. So our previous Biocurator working group page, we had all of the links to previous recordings, but it wasn't really organized in an easy way for people to find things, especially with more and more talks over the 3 years. You know, there was a long list of different topics. So this is something that we're working on at the moment, and I would like to give a huge shout out to Scott Goringer and Erin Riggs and Danielle Azariti, who have really been a huge help with organizing this page. So it is still under construction, we're working on it, and I will let you know as soon as it's available. But basically the idea is that you will all have access to this Biocurator resource page. On the page, there will be a section with a link to the recent calls and the recording of the call, and then also information on the future calls so that you have that as well. And then Scott is working on building basically a way to present all the different topics. So we have organized the topics into different larger topics, which you can click on and go to those links and find the recordings and information on the different calls. So we felt that this was just an easier way for you to find information that you might be looking for. So we have subdivided it into general curation topics, gene curation, and then variant curation topics as well. And then you'll go to those links, and you can from there get to a YouTube recording of the call, which has some more detail as well, and also provides additional information if there is any. So for example, links to publications or other resources or web pages that could be helpful. So as I mentioned, it's still under construction. Hopefully we will be done with this in the next few weeks, and I will let you know as soon as that is available. Also in the survey, we had asked for ideas for future calls, and we got really a good response to this. It's just really helpful to know what people are looking for. So a few folks had asked for examples of curations from different expert panels. So we did cover the inborn errors of metabolism on the last call, but we will certainly schedule additional calls from other expert panels as well, including both gene and variant curation. A lot of people had asked actually for another call on splicing prediction tools. Some of you may remember that Marcy Richardson had talked about this last year, and it was a hugely popular topic. And so she will be back by popular demand on May 14th with more information on splicing prediction. And then there was also a request for a talk on the Bayesian adaptation of the ACMG-AMP criteria. So we're very lucky to have Les Biesecker joining us on June 25th for that. So these are all scheduled, and we'll look into the other suggestions as well and scheduling those. But as I mentioned, always happy to take any suggestions for things that you could be helpful, that could be helpful to you, or really any improvements that you think our group could be making. So again, a huge thank you to you, and I'm happy to take any questions or any additional suggestions that you may have.